Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Bet365 Stadium. Norwich City in action this afternoon against Stoke City here, and we have the lineup to bring you. And when Liam Manning mentioned changes, he wasn't kidding. Norwich City line up like this. Vladan Kovacevic in goal. Stacey, Medic, Darling and Fisher a back four. So Kellen Fisher in a left back. It looks to us like a midfield three. Kenny McLean back from his injury. Pala Matson and Liam Gibbs alongside him. And then a front three with Oscar Schwartau and Jovan Makama supporting Josh Sargent. The subbench, Dan Grimshaw, Jose Cordoba, Rory McConville, Jeffrey Schlupp, Mirko Topic, Jacob Wright, Emi Marcondes, Matej Jurasek and Ante Cianats. So just to run through that again, Kovacevic in goal, Stacey, Medic, Darling and Fisher the back four, Matson, McLean and Gibbs the midfield three, with Schwartau and Makama. We're expecting that to be either side of Josh Sargent in what we're sort of mapping out to be a 4-3-3. But as ever with Liam Manning, it's always difficult to map out the formation. Paddy, he said there'd be changes. There are changes. What are your thoughts on that?
5 in total, Connor, yeah. He's a man of his word, so he's delivered on that. Clearly not happy with the midfield and forward areas. I don't think anybody has been, but it was graphic how poor they were in those areas of the pitch last weekend at Carrow Road. So even allowing for no Jallo, no Chris Gordon, he's not settled for the status quo. And I'd be interested to get the thoughts of the fans who are on here today. I don't think Cernach out of the team will be met with disapproval, universal disapproval. That had to happen for me. He's had enough opportunities now. Whether Makama's quite ready, I don't think he is. But as Liam said on Wednesday to us, there's a rawness to his game, but he's fearless and he'll try things, and they can always deal with the rough edges for what they're getting in the positive side of the column. Likewise Schwartau, likewise Gibbs. He referenced those two who came on last weekend, and he thought at least they tried to put their foot forward and tried to be progressive, and it was Gibbs' burst that led to actually Makama's goal in stoppage time. So he's decided that enough's enough. Your asset coming out, I wasn't surprised to see that, if I'm honest. I just think coming here today, Mark Robbins' team's well organised, very physical, very powerful. Probably wasn't necessarily a game you'd start him today for me, but and the upside, the bonus, I didn't think listening to how he mapped out McLean's week that we'd see him in the starting lineup, so that's a positive. And Topic coming out, well, put it in one of the pointers after the game Saturday. I think his levels have dipped. If I go back to that Portsmouth game, particularly alongside Nunes at Fratton Park, he was majestic that day, just roaming around like he had the freedom of that championship midfield. Since then, for me, he's dipped off that, and it's probably understandable. A new environment, new team, new teammates, new culture off the pitch. He was thrown into the deep end, and maybe he's had a little dip in a team who haven't really been performing well enough in possession. So I'm not necessarily unhappy to see Topic out if it's McLean in. And now it's for those lads, as we were walking up from the press room today, discussing what that 11 looks like now in terms of a performance. There's going to be so much legs, so much energy. They're going to run, and they're going to run again. Not necessarily for me, strikes you as a team will be good in terms of controlling the ball, but I think if they are coming here and feeling it's going to be a battle, they're probably more equipped with that 11. And then its set piece is going to be strong and going to be organised if they get themselves in front in terms of defensively, and maybe just get back on the coach with a hard-fought positive result. That to me feels that, looking at that 11, that's the way he wants to go today. When you've got Makama and Schwartau in around Josh Sargent, you're not really necessarily looking to control the play. In possession, it's more power, running, channels, aggression, front foot, and trying to push maybe those higher turnovers in that area of the pitch. And if you can do that with Sargent, that there's plenty of goals in this side. So I'm not averse to seeing 5 changes, because I think it has reached that point even this early in the season, and it was magnified by how they didn't perform really in the second half against Wrexham, that something needed to happen. And today, with that selection, has to now translate into a performance. But that selection to me is Liam Manning saying, no, that's it, I'm done with a few of these players for now. You lads come off the bench, show me what you can do.
Your feeling on formation, because I think we've mapped out as a 4-3-3. You can see a world where we're talking about a diamond, that's for sure. Kind of Schwartau maybe is a bit more of a 10. I'd be surprised if that was the case, but you never know, I guess. And I guess generally those changes in the midfield area, the move to put an extra man in there, It feels that if that is the way they're going to line up, but we have to caveat it with that, it all feels like it's geared towards probably remedying some of that lack of control that we've seen, not just against Wrexham, but against Coventry and so on and so forth.
And we said that on the pod last Saturday night. For me, you asked me what was the one thing they needed to change, and I think I said they need to stop getting outnumbered in the middle of the park, irrespective of the players who've been in there. It's been too hard. Coventry ran rings around them in the middle of the park. Wrexham did to a degree, slightly different template, but similar. And that's been a theme for me. They've got a little bit outnumbered. And then when they've had the ball, they've not been good enough. They've not took care of it. They've not done the basics right. If it is a 3, and I hope it is, then that levels things up a little bit. Particularly if it's, the 3 being Gibson and Matson maybe allowed to go further forward, and McLean is more of a sitter. There's quite a dynamism to that 3, I think. Liam Gibbs probably deserves a start now. He's had enough cameos where he has shown glimpses. And with him, for me, it's never been about his ability at this level, the technical ability. It's just his body holding up and the fitness. And the only way we'll find that out is if he gets a run of regular games, and today's an opportunity for him to put down a proper marker and carry on where he left off against Wrexham. So I personally do hope it is a 3. If it's a 2, then my fear is, again, it's going to be they're going to get played round, they're going to get played through. So structurally, Liam talked about that structurally, and part of the byproduct of that hopefully will be Kovacevic isn't getting so exposed and having to make so many clear saves, because the volume of chances they're giving up is, Liam Manning acknowledged it Wednesday, it's unacceptable. They needed to address that, and for me, part of that answer is the structural setup of this team. That 4, I think, will turn to a 3, and I think they'll look to push wide, Stacey and Fisher, and there'll be more wing backs in possession. But in terms of the middle of the park, I do hope it is the 3, and that they play pretty centrally and pretty close together, and just to give Norwich that platform to then hopefully connect to Sargent, Schwartau and Makama, because what you don't want is it becomes those 3 are isolated, they start dropping back, dropping deeper. We've seen that trait too often this season, and it just looks a jumble really when it happens like that. You need to keep the width, keep the depth in your play, and if you can do that with a 3-man midfield, for me, that's going to look a lot better than it has done in recent games.
Yeah, no, it was pretty striking, wasn't it? After that Wrexham game, the 3 really that Liam Manning singled out: Liam Gibbs, Oscar Schwartau, Jovan Makama. You mentioned it there. It feels particularly with Makama, probably. He got his first goal last weekend, which was clearly a big moment for him. Sadly, in the circumstances, wasn't one that he could really shout about. But definitely Liam Gibbs came on and injected energy. You mentioned Oscar Schwartau's running power. It feels like he kind of rewarded those performances, and I guess as a result, it's the messages that he sends to the ones that have been dropped out of that starting 11. I mean, Jurasek, Cianat, I'm trying to think who else was in there. Topic was in there. Cordoba was in there. I guess it's about sending that message of he's spoken so much about the basics. There were 3 that did those very well when they came on. Albeit, as we discussed, it's not the hardest thing to do when you're 3-1 down.
No, but I think all 3 of those in their performance levels, to varying degrees, but they've shown a personality, they've shown a willingness to try and affect to the game. Those players you've referenced, and it's not to single those out necessarily, but they haven't shown that. They've been very introverted for me, collectively, individually. They haven't imposed themselves on these games, and as a result, Norwich as a collective have looked a bit one-paced, a bit passive was the word Liam used quite often after the Wrexham dissection, and they have been too passive. They have been lacking in drive and energy and dynamism, and they need to find that from somewhere, and maybe in the here and now, by no manner of means is this maybe the settled 11 that Liam Manning's going to go with as the season develops, but in the here and now, when you're looking for a spark, you're looking for that dynamism and energy, and just a willingness to engage and all over the pitch, win your battles. He talked about that before a ball was kicked this season. You need to be good at winning your individual duels, your individual battles, and then you hope the quality level will come through. Well, sadly it hasn't as yet translated into the quality that we all feel is in this squad. So if it hasn't, you need to, as he said again after Wrexham, we need to go back to basics, reset the clock a little bit, and maybe start from a narrower base in terms of what your ambition is for this team, and just have those deliverables, be willing to engage all over the pitch, be willing to run, seems like basics, non-negotiables, but let's be honest, those players who are out of the side today, they haven't offered enough of that. And if you don't do that in the Championship as a baseline, you've got no chance most weeks, and certainly not against the Mark Robbins team, who've started the season very well.
Do you see enough creativity in that 11, or is that about almost trying to feel their way into the game and then allowing maybe some more creativity to come off the bench and try and impact it?
I'm not sure there's a lot of creativity in the squad, full stop, and we've had this debate, since Nunes has gone and further afield Sarah went, and even Science to a degree. Those are question marks that will persist until we see an uptick in performance and results from this team on a consistent basis. But you're right, Marc Condes does have that. Said that, he does have that creativity. Jurasek and Cernach, we'd like to think they have that in their locker. We've not seen enough of it in a Norwich shirt, and even Jacob Wright in a slightly different dimension. But he does have that ability to open up the game and be progressive in terms of how he goes about his craft. So maybe it is that. Maybe it is that 11 there, get us in the game, keep us in the game into the second half. And then as it opens up, Stoke make changes, there's more spaces, maybe then you do drop some of those more progressive players into the mix to go and hopefully go and get the win.
Let's bring you the Stoke team. They've got obviously started very well, won 4 of their opening 6 games, although 2 of those defeats have come in the last 3. They lost last weekend away at QPR. The team for Stoke is Johansson in goal, Tuamendi, Laurel Wilmot and Aaron Cresswell, who was a target for Norwich City in the summer. Seko, Rigo, Junho and Manorth is their free, and they've got Manorth and Thomas either side of Mbamwa, who's been on loan from Manchester City and has made quite an impactful start. Their subs bench is Bonham, Phillips, Talavierov, who was at Plymouth last season, Bocat, Pearson, Nzonzi, Donnelly, Cisse and Bozenic. So no Ben Gibson from a Norwich City perspective in that squad at all. I think he's been battling some injuries. That's how they line up. Stephen Nzonzi on their bench for the first time since his return. I couldn't believe he was still playing football, but there we go. He's come back to almost, finish his career here. Paddy, in terms of back to Norwich, left back as well, that's another area that has been changed. I think, I don't want to be too harsh on Jose Cordoba because he's not a left back. It wasn't his natural position. He had a tough afternoon last week in terms of the pace that Kabore and Wrexham utilised against him. Probably on that basis, no real surprise that Callum Fisher has come in. And I guess, is there a concern from your perspective that they lose a little bit of natural left-footedness on that side by having Callum Fisher as a left back?
Well, to be fair, when straight after the game last Saturday, he was asked about Cordoba, and we all saw the struggles he had, and I don't think that is naturally a comfortable position for him, more of a left back than a left-sided defender, left-sided centre-back. Liam Manning's response initially after the game was, well, he likes that balance, that left-sided balance to his defence, but the fact that Fisher's in today tells me that the overriding element has clearly Cordoba hasn't delivered enough, and that the balance, not sacrificed, but that in Fisher, who went over there, if you remember, second half against Coventry and did a lot better on the second half on the left than he did on the right, if the truth be told, and came out the side, and now he gets a very early opportunity again. Clearly too soon at this moment for Mahobo, but he must be tracking now towards coming into the equation.
Well, I'm trying to look over the far side. It is over the far side, and we're quite high up. But that to me does look like Lucian Mahobo on the far side. So he has travelled, and we know they tend to travel probably with one extra. I'm sure maybe Kenny McLean's fitness was a part of that as well. He has travelled. So again, a positive sign that probably he's closer to it. I guess maybe the interesting one is the fact that Jeffrey Schlupp's returned to the bench and Mahobo has missed out, whether that's for fitness reasons or football reasons. I guess we'll find out. But even having Jeff Schlupp back and I guess what he gives Norwich on the left side, probably just to tie into that conversation, he offers them that left-sidedness that, and maybe again on the basis of what we've seen so far, maybe not. But you hope as he gets more fit, a little bit more athleticism and a bit more dynamic on that left side as well.
Yeah. To me, but with Mahobo over there, he's clearly not of a level that he could be considered. Because ultimately, the first thing that Liam Manning said when he was back in the mix over the last international break was when they needed to get him 21s games. And again, events have overtaken that. Hasn't really presented itself as an opportunity. But I suppose if Schupp, as he has clearly now returned to training and done enough in this week to be considered, you can still dial back a little bit on Mahobo and rather than push him back into the matchday squad. But looking at him from afar here, he seems to be moving pretty well. And Manning's spoken about he's been impressed with what he's already produced in training. So, West Brom midweek, maybe that's the first opportunity for him to come into contention for a match day place. But And with Schlupp, Schlupp does offer that versatility, both defensively and more forward thinking. I see there's a comment there about, there's nothing on the left-hand side, as in left-footed, which is true, but, the nature of the game now in terms of inverted operations, I think that's less of an issue for me.
Well, I'll be honest, that is my feeling generally. That looks quite a narrow team. We speak about formations, whether that's a 4-3-3 or a diamond or however they line up.
Midfield, yeah.
Barring Jack Stacey, it feels like there's a lot of narrowness in that shape.
True, but then, have we seen huge amounts of wide play, really, from this Norwich team? I mean, when Joe's been in the side, his first instinct when he gets the ball out wide is to cut in field. I think that's just the nature of how Manning sees the game in terms of he's not looking necessarily for those. Obviously, Stacey does offer that width, but even his goal last week was him more in an inside right channel and the ball over the top from Jurasek. That's not Jurasek's game. That's not Cernac's game. So, me personally, that is less of a concern because that's not really the balance that he's tried to go with in this team so far this season.
Well, I'll throw you this question from Kevin. Good to see Kenny back, and yes, we know he's a leader and voice needed, but also surprised that Jacob Wright hasn't had a start. Obviously, not played a minute and only returned last weekend, to be fair, but was one of the unused substitutes last weekend against Wrexham. Obviously, got sent off against Middlesbrough earlier on in the season. What do you make of where he's at the moment? It's an interesting point. A player who was so good at the back end of last season in probably a style of play that really suited him. It feels like probably still finding his way a little bit in what Liam Manning's asking from those midfielders.
Well, I thought he was very revealing towards the end. I think it was last week's press conference as he reached the end of his 3-game ban, and he was asked about Wright, and he felt he would come back a more improved, more rounded player for that 3 games out. That as he said, he's come to the club. He had Giannis, who clearly loved him as a player, and give him that platform, and he was the shining light in a very downward spiral last season. Johannes goes and Liam Manning comes in, wants different demands and asks more from him maybe than he's used to as a very young player. He only turned 20 there last week. You forget how young he is, senior circles wise, and the fact that he started him in the opening games tells me that he'd done enough to impress Liam Manning, but it didn't quite work. I think we'd all agree he wasn't really at the level he'd shown at the back end of last season. Got frustrated in the Middlesbrough game trying to chase a loose pass and red card, and he's effectively had to lose his place. I'd be a little, if I was him, I'd be a little bit, because I don't think necessarily top pitch, as we've discussed, has really drove it forward, and Maatsen to a lesser extent as he only came in last week, but there hasn't been a huge amount happening in the 3 games he's been out of the midfield. He may have felt he should be back in it, but given how poor they were last week, given the question marks about the mindset and the mentality, I think if McLean is fit, he has to play today because he offers that leadership. I think it's less a slight on Jacob Wright and what he maybe can offer this team. It's just in the here and now. This whole selection is about consigning what happened to Wrexham to be the anomaly, the outlier, rather than a pattern and a worrying trend. Come out today, put a performance on that doesn't have any of the accusations or the questions that were associated with the Wrexham performance in terms of behaviours, in terms of that willingness to, as I say, try and be a bit more progressive, front foot, energy, dynamism. And then moving forward, if they get that today, you've then got a platform to what is a very big week ahead, start to look at maybe opening up in terms of the creativity element of this. I think right now this does feel very much like Manning has thought, come on, I'm going to be getting a lot more searing questions if that trend that we saw against Wrexham in the second half continues for any length of time. So it's a line in the stand selection for me today, and he needs a similar in terms of performance. And if that's the case, you put McLean in if he's fit and available and ready to go.
Yeah, and he's spoken a lot about competition, the importance of it, of pushing players, and the fact that maybe he hasn't done that. And now you bring in 5 new players with hopefully a real hunger to perform and impress today. That's the aim. Look, I guess this is the penultimate point. It's a big week. We know what it looks like from here in terms of West Brom at Carrow Road on Wednesday, who I didn't watch the game last night, but anecdotally I've heard they were pretty good on the ball. And then obviously that big one next Sunday at Portman Road against Ipswich Town, with everything that is on the line from that. There's been a lot of focus on, if it goes wrong and what that looks like. But actually, you're right. If they can win here, if they can beat West Brom, suddenly that game next Sunday, you roll into that with a lot more optimism and positivity. That feels like where this week could be. It feels like it could go one of 2 ways.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, we don't really need to make this a derby debate because we'll have plenty of airtime for that. But in the days ahead, but apart from whacking a very, very poor pre-Chris Wilder Sheffield United, they're not starting particularly well. So they've got Portsmouth at home today. If they don't get a positive result there, then there'll be plenty of question marks around McKenna and what that team are trying to do, because we all know their ambition. You look at the scale of their outlay again this summer. So for me, Liam was asked about that. He was asked about almost are you looking over the horizon to what comes not long down the track, and he said no, today it has to be the focus. Get this out of the way, positive result, positive performance, roll it on again. Carrow Road, West Brom, that's huge for me because of how poor they've been at Carrow Road. They need to get a positive result there midweek. And if you put those two together, good result here, good result midweek, I think there'll be a renewed bullishness, maybe not optimism, but certainly a bullishness that they can go to Ipswich and they can be competitive and hopefully maintain that 16-year hex. But in the here and now, I don't think we need to open up that topic really. This is all about the next 90 minutes here, and that 11, that much changed 11, delivering what he said he's got from these players in the week, which is a response and players taking ownership and players speaking up. Okay, fine, actions now, not just words.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, this is a ground that since 2016 Norwich have done quite well on. They're unbeaten in since 2016 here, which was that night. If I mentioned it to Paddy, the Gary O'Neill red card, then I think everyone will know what I mean with that. And also against Mark Robins as well. Norwich have had a good record. Mark Robins yet to beat Norwich City as a manager in 11 attempts. Obviously, the bulk of that with Cov, 2 with Barnsley, one with Stoke. 11 played, no wins, 2 draws, 9 defeats. Conceded 24 goals against Norwich as well, scoring only 8. So taking 2 points against his former team from his playing days. So both in terms of that and in terms of this ground, Paddy, certainly in recent times, it's been a pretty happy place for Norwich City to travel to. Will it be this afternoon? How do you see it going?
Yeah, I think they're unbeaten here in the last 5. I don't know if you just mentioned that, Connor, but they've tended to like their trips here. But I mean, me and Sam did the preview show yesterday, and obviously pre this team news, I thought they'd get an improved performance because that's human nature. They're not going to be as bad, I don't think, as they were second half against Wrexham and just throwing it in effectively. But I still thought Stoke, given the start they've had, given how organised Robins has clearly got them, they don't concede many goals, do they? So
lowest in the Championship.
Is that right? 4, yeah. So I thought they'd probably fall the wrong side of a 2-1 defeat. But now I've seen that 11, I'm going to slightly tweak that. I'm going to say a score draw, which I think would mark a very good result against this Stoke team today. You?
Yeah, I'm going to go bullish. I'm going to go. We'll get a reaction and a result from Norwich City, and hopefully a 2-1 victory, which will just calm the nerves a little bit. That would be fantastic from a Norwich perspective. But I agree with you. I don't think a point would be the worst way to set up this week, albeit maybe it doesn't completely quiet down some of the noise, and I guess that probably is contingent on performance in terms of, well, if you get a draw, but we see a lot more encouraging signs on the ball and from an attacking perspective, I think we probably look at it as a positive point. If we saw a lot more kind of behind the ball, holding on for dear life, Vladan Kovacevic bailing them out of trouble, I think the alarm bells would continue to sound. So let's see what we get this afternoon here, and it looks like it's going to be a pretty full away end. They've moved it here. It used to be behind the goal, just to our right, and it's now just shifted along a bit to the corner, but I can see plenty of yellow.
Got the rail seating as well.
Got the rail seating, so there should be some good noise over there, and hopefully they're given something positive to react to and respond to this afternoon. Of course, Blinken.com, the place to go throughout the afternoon. All your coverage, analysis and reaction to this game here in Staffordshire. We will bring it to you. Paddy will be speaking to Liam Manning after the game, and let's hope we're talking about a Norwich City victory. Thanks very much for joining us. See you soon.